Now, I know some of y'all might think Monique as a gold digger, controlling, someone who beat up Candace. But this episode today, we're going to get into her interview with Laterras, okay, on the Dear Future Wifey podcast. Because over here, we love to talk about relationships, marriage, divorce, life after divorce from a therapist perspective. So make sure you get your little drinky drink, okay? Because we're going to get into all things Monique Samuels, pre-divorce, post-life after divorce, and healing, and the grief that comes with getting a divorce. So let's get into it. Now, upon watching this interview, some of us have had a perception of who Monique is. Okay, the person that you see on TV, the person you saw exit, Love and Marriage DC, the person who has worked with Carlos King. But in this interview, Monique is still the same person, yet evolved at the same time, if that makes sense. It's like she has learned and she's learning about herself and on her healing journey. And once again, I think Monique is a prime example of someone who healing is not linear and it looks different for different people. And some of y'all, no matter what I say, gonna still see her as a gold digger, controlling, and that, her husband dodged a bullet. Because some of y'all got this narrative in your mind that I can't change. But when it comes to her marriage, she talks about some key pivotal things to me that I want to discuss a little bit further. Not knowing herself before she got married and being in control. The foundation of her relationship was her being the lead at the forefront. She talks about her and her ex-husband going to marriage counseling, and through the marriage counseling, premarital counseling, they actually gave them some homework assignments. They actually questioned, is this wedding date, is it in stone? Can y'all change it? She reflects upon and demonstrates that people around her were telling her this wasn't going to work. Okay, even in the premarital counseling, people felt like, okay, y'all really want to get married, but it was a focal point. She wanted marriage. Her ex-husband did not. Okay, and throughout their premarital counseling, they were given assignments. Okay, oftentimes in couples therapy, premarital counseling, I give assignments also. And she says how he wasn't even doing the assignments. Okay, she was. So think about the foundation and the forefront of your relationship. We always talk about that. What is the foundation? How are you planting those seeds so that the rest of your relationship will mimic and grow out of that? Okay, so in the beginning, it showed that her husband was a little bit passive or didn't want to get married at all, passive and didn't want to get married. And she was the one leading. Okay, and thinking about that, was that going to be the recipe for success of having a husband who was emotionally passive, a provider, but wasn't really showing up for her the way she needed? Okay, and she also talks about universal statements. Okay, have you ever heard of that? Universal statements is when you use I, always, never. Those statements don't actually happen in relationships, but people get caught up in the you always, you never, it's always me. All those statements, imagine how they make your partner feel. Are you talking with your partner, having conversations? Or are you talking at them? I think a lot of people just get caught up in the emotions of communication that they use these statements, not really understanding the full impact of using those universal statements. You never, always, absolutes. Okay. And it gets to a point where your partner becomes so defensive that they know, or they think they know how you're going to react and have these conversations with them, that they become stonewalled and they shut down. And I think that's what happened in her relationship. And she reflects upon that, about how talking at him instead of with him really affected their relationship, and how their communication styles were very different. But going once again back to that foundation of where they started from, Monique was always in control. Okay, she was always at the forefront. And I believe her husband felt like he is a provider, and that's how I show up, right? I'm providing. Okay, and a lot of men are like that in relationships. I'm a provider. I make all this go around. Okay, you ain't never got to worry about nothing. Why do you need me to show up for vulnerability? Why do you need to be seen? Okay, not knowing that, yes, you can be a provider, but where are you emotionally? How are you showing up for me? How do I feel seen by you in this relationship? As a husband who's a provider, do you really want to be seen? Or are you okay with just having the money be what they see in you? And how over time that really affected her marriage. Okay, there were points where they weren't even talking. Okay, when they started on let's talk about Real Housewives of Potomac. Okay, now it was actually her husband who told her to sign up. Okay, he thought based off of her personality, her sarcasm, her quick wit, she would be good for the show. And she said, nah, that ain't for me. But over time, he convinced her to do the show. She did a tape and she was in there. Okay, and we all know how that went down. Right? And some people might feel like a lot of these reality shows hinder, put a nail in the casket of relationships and marriages. Now, I want to know from you guys, do you think Real Housewives of Potomac really played a role in how their marriage ended up? Or was it DC? Okay, because she gets to DC and she talks about how when that show started, they weren't even talking. Okay, and I remember watching it, and there was a pivotal scene probably right when they're probably going into their divorce, where they had this big blow up in a bedroom, and I think producers asked them if she wanted them to stop filming them for them to come back, and she said no. Okay, and I knew in that moment, I was like, oh, they are not in a good place. And it's interesting how people go on these reality shows thinking, not saying Monique did this or her ex-husband, but thinking they can fake it and pretend, put tape on their relationship, but eventually we see through it. Okay, we see it on Love and Marriage Huntsville. We saw how Martell and Melanie were not in a good place, but they were pretending for some time. I still low-key believe that Melanie knew about this other woman and was trying to get her to cheat respectfully, but that's a whole nother thing. Okay, but how they were in a bad place. Okay, and how that show to me only highlighted and probably pushed them more towards divorce, because I think that Monique outgrew her relationship. Okay, and we don't talk enough about outgrowing a marriage. And he asked her, Laterras. Now, I do begin on Laterras. Okay, he was a lot better in this interview. I actually watched the whole thing, y'all. So keep your prayers alive so when I get to the doors of heaven, they let me in. Okay, so I watched the whole thing, Laterras, if you see it. All right, it wasn't that bad. Okay, so he asked her, does she have any regrets about the show, about Potomac? She says no. Now, we've seen her do interviews before, so for some of us, we ain't surprised. She doesn't regret that fight. She said her actual lowest moment in reality TV was actually DC, when her and her husband were really at the brink of divorce, and how she saw and reflected upon how she was talking to him, how she was handling things. It's interesting how it seems like Candace is a non-factor, okay? But in reality, she's focused more on how she treated her husband, who she actually loved, cared about, and is the father of her children, which was the lowest point for her. But she does not regret anything. She feels like all those things happened to make her where she is now and help her heal and self-reflect. So do y'all think she should regret the fight with Candace? Let me know. And so we talked about her husband being a provider, and he asked her, how was it for you when you filed for divorce? And there's a moment of silence, a long moment. And I want to know, for people who watched the interview, was that uncomfortable for you guys? Is it uncomfortable for you to sit in silence? Because there was so much emotion in her response and the question, even though we didn't hear no words. If you have gone through a divorce, hearing and knowing, I really have to sign those papers. It's really time. I'm really ready to let go. All the emotion that comes with that. And we talked about Tia and life after divorce, but just how it just really takes you in. It makes you, kind of humbles you. Okay? Because in some eyes, as Monique talked about, you feel like a failure. You feel like you failed yourself, your family, the world, especially being on TV. You failed everybody because you thought the life that God gave you was this life. But what did she say? She realized there were ego-led decisions versus God-led decisions. And her marrying her ex-husband, she believed was a God-led decision, but in reality, it was an ego-led decision. Sit on that, okay? Because I think oftentimes we talk about being equally yoked, but sometimes that's not about being a God-led decision or a God-led thing. It's more about your ego. Okay. And our egos keep us longer in relationships, whether that's platonic, friendships. How much of our ego is in really control, and how much ego often leads us down this road where we're unhappy. Okay. Because like Monique said, she was looking for what was lacking in herself from a relationship. And that's one of the biggest things she has learned is that people often ask you, what are you looking for in a man now that you're divorced? Okay. And it's not so much about what I am looking for in another person. I need to find it myself. And so many people go into relationships trying to figure out what that person can provide for me that is missing in here. But Monique, to me, has gone to a part of her healing journey to recognize I'm not ever going to find what I'm looking for in another person, because I got to find it in myself. And that is the biggest part of healing, is getting to know yourself, sitting with your own ish. Also learning that whatever you're looking for out there in a person, you need to find it in here first. But not a lot of people are really ready to hear that. Not a lot of people are really ready to sit in that, because it is easier to look for it through the apps, swiping. Okay. Oh, he looked like he can help me out. Oh, he looked like he can see me. Oh, it looks like he can offer me this. Well, but what about offering that to yourself? Because nobody's going to ever love you the way you love yourself. But because you're so busy searching and wondering why it's not working, why your relationships are not working, what is the foundation of yourself? What is the foundation in here? Okay, we cooking tonight. We cooking, all right? Now, that silence to me, it reminded me so many of my clients. The ones who I've seen come in and their husbands told them, I think you should go to counseling because something's wrong with you. You don't want to be intimate with me. You seem more distant. And then over time, your girl helps them see they're not the problem. Their marriage is. Okay. And sometimes it's about recognizing that I will be happier in a more healed version of myself if this person was not in my life. Maybe it's still, you got kids, so you got to keep them somewhere around. But it's I'm not really the problem. In all these years, my husband has been making me feel like I'm the problem, and really, I'm not happy in this relationship. That's the core of my issues, is that I'm not happy. Okay. And I think that's hard for people sometimes to let go of what they know, which is that person, and go into the unknown. Getting okay with facing being alone. And that's hard for people to really sit with themselves, no distractions, and not keeping yourself in a relationship or in situations that distract you from being with yourself. And Monique talks about being alone, okay? And how you have to get comfortable with sitting with yourself and being able to heal. And the one thing I think people don't understand about divorce is that the wounds are not always obvious. When it comes to people being celebrities, having money, people really need to have some kind of attachment to, oh, he must have cheated. Oh, it must have been something obvious, a wound we could see. But oftentimes in relationships, marriages that end, sometimes those emotional wounds you can't see. So people keep questioning, well, what happened? On the outside, y'all had the life I wanted. Y'all had the houses, y'all travel, similar to what y'all do to Tia. What you mean? It was just, I can never say it, irreconcilable style differences. What do you mean you were just unhappy? He not beating you, right? You said he wasn't cheating. Y'all living good. What you mean you leaving? People really need to attach some kind of tangible thing and not just realize I just want to be happy. I want a better life for my children. And if we stop judging and stop trying to be a Nancy Drew in these different relationships that are ending and focusing on yourselves, then I think the stigma of divorce, the loneliness that people feel will fade. And I think people have more open conversations, dialogue with themselves, friends, and family about why the relationship ended. But when it comes to divorce, there's also so much loneliness because people, you feel like, who really understands? Okay, how do I tell people I was just unhappy? Just unhappy? Girl, go home to your man. And some of those people are the ones who are sitting at home unhappy themselves, thinking about they want to leave, but they don't have the courage. So instead of supporting you and leaving, they tell you to go back and stay. Or sometimes they just don't know what to say. And so you feel like you have to keep it in, you can't open up, and you have to deal with all that grief by yourself. But I'm loving that more and more people with platforms, celebrities, are being open about divorce, the things that happen, the fears, the loneliness, living in lack. She talked about that. She don't want to live in lack anymore. Lacking emotional support, lacking being seen, lacking a partner who was being able to be vulnerable. Now, when she started to pull away, of course, her husband probably felt it. And that's when she said she felt him come close more, is when she was pulling away. But at that point, it was already too late. She had made a decision that she wanted to leave her marriage. And now they're trying to co-parent. And she says that she has not gotten anything. Well, they have a prenup, and she got a salary based off of how many years they were together and how much she would have made if she had a full-time job. But other than that, they're trying to co-parent. It's challenging. Just like most relationships, when you try and co-parent somebody, you never think about that part when you marry them because you never think about getting a divorce. But I hope we can have more conversations about divorce. I'm enjoying people talk about healing from relationships. We focus so much on toxicity going viral, these toxic podcasts, these toxic nighttime conversations. What is it called? The conversation tonight or something like that. But never about healing from relationships ending, finding yourself after divorce, finding yourself being lonely, sometimes feeling broken, the grief. So over here, we like to destigmatize and make it known that it's okay to walk away from relationships, to find yourself, to sit with yourself, humanizing the experience. People sometimes grow apart. People sometimes outgrow their relationships. People want to heal, and sometimes that means leaving people behind. Even if that person looks all good on paper to your friends and family, but what you're going through behind closed doors is what really matters. And I want to encourage you, it's the end of the year. It's okay to think about getting divorced. It's okay to Google how much it costs. It's okay to think about yourself. Because how long have you been focused on other people? And what are you really getting out of that? So I hope everybody thinks about where they are right now, what they want to have in their life come 2025, what needs to be left behind, and look at it as an opportunity to sit with yourself these next couple of weeks. Now you know I love me a good podcast recap. Okay, so let me know your thoughts. Make sure you hit that subscription button, that subscribe, join the membership, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye.